Okay, we are live. All right. So thank you for joining us tonight on this flash fiction, romantic suspense. What do I want to call this? Roundtable, I guess we could call it. I am Hope Welborn, and I currently serve as the web manager of Spark Flash Fiction, among other things. I write romantic suspense, not currently published, but I do have an agent, Jim Hart of Heartline Agency. And I have won a few contests. Genesis, I won Genesis this year. I've won Blue Ridge Foundations Award in the past. I've been a finalist in the First Impressions. So just to give you a little bit of background on myself. One little point of, somebody said hi. One little point of housekeeping. We can see your comments, but we can't see your name. So it might be helpful if you tell us who you are when you put a comment, so we can say hi back. Okay. Tonight I am joined by two of my friends, romantic suspense writers. We have Shannon Redman and Darlene L. Alterner. And I met both of these ladies a few years ago, and fun story, we were all finalists at Blue Ridge in the Foundations contest together, the three of us. We took first, second, and third. And we kind of just came together to form sort of a group of romantic suspense writers. And that has since turned into something kind of fun. This was Shannon's brainchild called the Suspense Squad. And
group thing.
It's a group thing, but, yeah. And Suspense Squad is a group of romantic suspense writers. There's 6 of us, and we interview other romantic suspense writers. This was kind of came out of the COVID nonsense where people were releasing books, especially debut authors, in the middle of a pandemic where they couldn't get out and go to book signings and things like that. And so we started interviewing them and helping get the word out about their writing. And so it's just continued, as we've gone through the year. So if you're interested in that, please visit suspensesquad.com to see our interviews on video. You can also find them on YouTube.
That actually started with Darlene, because Darlene it was her debut novel that came out in April.
That's right.
And COVID hit in, February, March. And we were like, oh no, she's not going to be able to go do all her book signings and go to the bookstores. And we just felt really, really bad for her, our kind of the group of friends that we write with. And so we were like, what can we do? What can we do? And so the Suspense Squad was born, and we started doing the videos and interviews, and it's just kind of grown from there. So it's been a really good experience. It's a lot of fun. We've had a good time.
Mm-hmm. These two ladies were phenomenal to work with. And so, yeah, I want you guys to introduce yourself. So Shannon, you're at the top of my screen, so I'm going to pick on you.
Okay.
Introduce yourself. Tell us about your what you write, who your agent is, what you've had published, and what you've written for Spark.
Sure, absolutely. So I am Shannon Redman. I have just had my debut novel, Cave of Secrets. Let's see if I can get this to show up here. It released in October. Do what?
It's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. It released in October. So that was very, very exciting for me. But I did really get my start with Spark magazine. That was the first place. That was my very first thing that I got published and paid for, which was really, really nice. And I was so excited when I got my first article or flash fiction story in Spark magazine, and that it was just such a wonderful feeling, so encouraging to know that I could write. Because I think when you're kind of a new author, you always wonder about that. Like, am I any good? Am I any good? And, or where do I kind of fall in that range? And so writing for Spark did so many things for me. One, it gave me the first time of working with an editor. So I think that was really important. It was a great learning experience. 2, it taught me to write very concisely, because you have to write a full story, full scene, beginning, middle, and end in 1,000 words. And also it, like I said, it gives you some encouragement. So this was one we're going to talk about tonight. This was one of the magazines that I was published in for Spark. I found it on my shelf. Let's see. I'm struggling with my camera tonight here. It is called, it was Splickety, Who Done It. And then I also have, here's the Spark, one of the Spark magazines that, what they kind of look like for you guys. So you can kind of see what they look like. And that was in 2017. And then this one was also in 2017. So I started writing in 2016 was when I wrote my first story. My husband got tired of me talking about wanting to be a published author. And he said, just finish a book, Shannon, just write it and finish it. And then, so I was like, okay, so I did. And then I was like, what do I do now? And I found a writers conference at Blue Ridge Writers, Mountain Christian Writers Conference that I went to. And that's where I met my agent. Her name is Tamala Hancock Murray. And there are several of us, several of our friends that, we call ourselves Tamalites. So she's wonderful. She's done so much for me to help me in my writing and my career. And helping get published. So I'm just grateful, so grateful to her. And what else did you want to know? I live in Western North Carolina in the Asheville area. And most of my settings when I do write books are in the mountains of Western North Carolina. So I like to write about where I live. I am working on my second book. And so hopefully we'll be seeing more of that come out in the future. That's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon.
You're welcome.
All right, Darlene.
My name's Darlene Alterner, and I'm from London, Ontario, Canada. So I'm up north. Well, kind of north, but
Very north for me.
Where it's a little bit cold.
South.
It's not always cold here, though. It's really not.
Just to live at the North Pole. It's not that cold. Yeah.
I'm not with Santa or anything like that.
You wish you were, though. That's the truth.
Right?
He loves Christmas.
I started writing quite a few years ago, and it was funny. Actually, I started a creative writing. I took a creative writing class, and they told me to write a short story. Well, I started writing this short story, and I had interwoven so much into it that I couldn't end it. This was my first attempt. So at the very end of it, I literally said, if you want to know what happens, you have to wait for the book. And that was my very first book that I wrote, that was finaled in ACFW's Genesis 3 times, I think. It never won, but it did win the Daphne Award. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So then I wrote another book that also won some awards. And I think that was kind of how I got to meet my agent, is also Tamala Hancock Murray. I met her at ACFW and had a meeting with her. And that was the year that I won the Genesis for my second book. So I think that kind of helped snag or get her attention or whatever. And then she suggested I try writing for Love Inspired Suspense. And that's where my debut novel happened, as Shannon said, in April. It's called Border Breach.
It's very good. Yes.
Excellent.
And my second book is coming in March 2021. It's called Abducted in Alaska.
Yay.
It arrived today. I was so excited.
I'm excited for that one. I've read the beginning of that one, and I can't wait to read the rest of it because it's
and all of these stories that I'm writing in this series are based on a Canada-US border. So the first one is on the Windsor-Detroit border. This one is on the Alaska-Yukon border. And I picked it because my brother used to live in the Yukon, and it's actually dedicated to him.
Mm-hmm.
And now book 3 comes out in August, and it is based on the New Brunswick, Maine border. So, yeah. So I wrote the story that I wrote for Spark is actually a love story. And for me, Spark, what Shannon said, it just really, to have to write a story in 1,000 words really helps you learn how to be concise.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really helped me in my writing process, is to every word counts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really important in this story. This particular story, it was called The Love Letter. It was I think it was a summer issue. Yeah.
It was a summer issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was a story about an older man that reminisces about his a kind of a lost love, and there's a letter in it, and I won't tell you. You can read it some, but
it's on sparkflashfiction.com under our summer issue from last year. And Shannon has a story in that one too, and I do too. So you're welcome to go read those.
Cool.
They're not suspense; those are just romance. But yes,
those are. Yeah, No More Lifeguards, I think, is the name of mine in that one.
Yes, No More Lifeguards.
And you were in. I think too, Darlene, you were saying that it teaches us to write concisely, writing for flash fiction.
Yeah.
And you were saying that it teaches us to write a scene. And when you think about a book, sometimes when people think about a book, you're like, oh my gosh, that could be so daunting, right? The book is, anywhere from these are 55,000 words that Darlene and I have published. Trade books are 80,000 words. So but a book is made up of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can write one scene, a flash fiction scene, then you can write a book.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that once you kind of grasp that, you just got to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And those scenes, the flash fiction stories, are bite-sized pieces for a greater book.
Yes, that's
absolutely.
Excellent point. And sometimes you just, thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer has just posted a link to that issue in our comments.
I see someone is here also from Ontario. Yay, hello.
Yeah, representing Ontario and Canada. So yeah, that's awesome. Again, just a reminder, we can't see your names. It just says Facebook user. But if you just drop your name in there, we can give you a shout out. And shout out to Karen Tyner, who I think also has a story in that summer issue. Karen's written a couple of flash fiction pieces for us too.
Hi, Karen. See your name
too. Yep. So you bring up a good point about a scene. So that just segues into the next point that we were going to talk about. A lot of people have asked us. Well, a lot of people ask us, first of all, how do you write flash fiction? And then they specifically for this issue want to know, how do you write romantic suspense? So like Shannon said, you need to think of your story as a scene. Scenes, stories, of course, have a beginning, middle, and end. And I am a plotter, and I subscribe to the 3-act structure, which the second act is actually divided into 2. So it's really a 4-act structure, which also has a beginning, middle, and end. And then each scene within those acts should also have a beginning, middle, and end. And so when you think about a story that way, and you think about flash fiction, it is a story. It's just condensed very tightly. And you don't have time to do, when I say time, you don't have the words to tell the whole, story, the backstory especially. Flash fiction really helps you learn how to trickle those pieces in and give just enough information to ground your reader. And so you don't have to explain everything, because, good fiction doesn't take time away from the story and the forward motion to stop everything and just give this big backstory info dump. You don't ever want to do that in a novel or flash fiction. So that's another thing that flash fiction helps you do, is learn how to just drop in just enough that your reader understands what's going on, but you don't have to answer every question they're going to have about what's going on. So do you guys have anything to add to that point? Because I'm going to look at my notes over here.
Yeah, I think that, you don't have to make every point, and you in a flash fiction story, like you said, you kind of drop them into the action. I think you don't want to give a lot of backstory. It's just like you drop them right into the action. If it's romance suspense, you got to have some romance in it. There's got to be some romantic tension there, some attraction, a possible kiss. If you can fit that in naturally, don't force it. Nobody likes a forced kiss. So you got to have that happen naturally.
They also have to know each other too. Like you can't have them meet, because there's no time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to.
That's what we were talking about this. We talked a little bit before we started this session with you guys, and so we were kind of talking our own ideas out with each other. And that was one thing that we brought out is, you have to pick the scene that you're going to tell, and it could be the meet cute. It could be the time where the two characters meet for the first time, but you don't have enough time for them to meet, become attracted, get to know each other, fall in love happily ever after. You don't have time for all of that. Yeah. So if you're gonna introduce them, then that is the story you're telling. That's their moment where they meet. That's the scene you're telling. you may not end that with a kiss unless, it's a very progressive couple. I don't know. But there are ways that you can
That's
have
like the soldier
romance.
at an earth in Times Square after World War II.
Yeah, there
That
you go. That might be a moment where you go, "Hi, what's your name? I don't care. Kiss me."
Yeah, that's the only time you might want to. If you wrote that seed, then maybe. But there's always a promise of a kiss, or a promise of something more
Promise
to
is-
come that is off the page.
Yes.
Right, exactly. The romance can be there in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different ways to have a romantic moment. A look, a touch of the hand, a pushing the hair aside. There's hugs, anything. There's a lot of different things that can be romantic that don't necessarily have to be the kiss. And it depends on what the story you're telling. You want your romance to be organic to the story and the characters that you're telling about. Okay, so we've talked about how your flash fiction needs to be a scene, but I don't want you to, like we were saying, if you were to take your favorite novel, open it up to the middle, pluck out a scene, and pull it out of that story and make it into a flash fiction, that's not going to work. Because you don't have the grounding. You're just taking it out of context. So you want to make sure that even though we tell you that you're writing a scene, you do have to encapsulate an entire story. You do have to ground us in the scene with who these characters are and what their conflicts are and what their goals are. And then you have to end it. Now, the ending doesn't necessarily have to be the happily ever after. I like what Shannon said about it being off page. So you can end it with the promise of something more.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question. Does the suspense have to end? For example, can a robber get away because a partner bends down to help his partner who's been shot? Absolutely. You don't have to solve the crime.
I love that, actually. I think that'd be a great ending because there's still more out there.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know who sent that question, but that's a very good one.
His partner bent down and helped the person helped his partner who's been shot because he probably likes her. That's where your romance comes in. So he's going to choose her over catching the criminal.
And you need to build that into that scene. We need to understand why he's going to stop and help her rather than go after the bad guy. You need to build that relationship into that scene so that we as the reader go, of course he's going to stop and help her because he's in love with her.
And we want to leave the ending too, so the reader kind of takes away what they kind of add their own ending type of idea. So like you've given them a snippet of an ending, but then they can use their imagination and kind of create the rest of it.
Yes, that is one of the things I like about flash fiction is that you do leave a lot to the reader's imagination to finish the story in their head. Yeah, absolutely. We do have another question too. How in depth does the suspense have to be? It depends on what you want to tell. So we'll give you some. We've actually got a list of some ideas that we're going to give to you at the end. But I want you to think about different scenarios. So all of your characters don't have to be law enforcement. Okay. We were talking earlier about a story that Lynn Blackburn wrote. She actually wrote it for Spark. And I think she has expanded it and created into something a little bit longer that she's using for newsletter subscribers. So I don't want to tell everything that happens in it, but it's basically set in a hospital where there is an active shooter situation. And then the characters are, hospital staff. So that's a situation where you don't have law enforcement catching a bad guy necessarily, but you've got suspense, you've got danger, and you've got romance in the story without it being, cops and robbers. Okay. So think outside the box is one thing we definitely want you to do. That's always a good idea to do with flash fiction is usually don't go with the first story, the first idea that you come up with, because everybody else has the same idea. We did the beach issue, that summer issue, and almost every story was set at the beach. And it was so refreshing when we had something that wasn't, or something that was a different take on the idea of the beach story. So we want you to think outside the box. And so don't necessarily think about law enforcement, cops and robbers, but think about other things. we talked about, well, I guess we could just go right on into that part of this.
I've actually got a question for you, Hope.
Okay.
If hopefully this won't put you too much on the spot, but how many characters do you typically see in a flash fiction story? I know what I've put in mine. I mean, I've had some that have had, a group of people in the story, and then I've had most of my stories have been just the hero, heroine, and maybe a sidekick. About how many do you typically see in a average flash fiction story?
We recommend as few as possible to tell the story, because you don't have time to introduce us. Let me say it this way, the more characters you have, the less time each person has to be on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So
it would get confusing too.
Huh?
Yeah. I think it would get confusing with too many.
Confusing. And somebody asked, what's the word count? A flash fiction story needs to be told in 1,000 words or less. Yeah. And that's tight.
Very tight.
Really tight. 1,000.
Challenging.
It is challenging, and it's fun, because I usually write the story that I want to tell, and then I go back and cut it down, and it's amazing where you can go, I don't really need that. I don't really need that. I can say that in one word instead of 5. And you do learn what pieces to keep in and what's important to the story. So 1,000 words is your total. I honestly usually do mine in about 700 to 800 words. So,
like a blog post.
Yeah, like a blog post.
Not the link in the blog post.
Some people do nano flash fiction, where it's like told in even less, like micro flash fiction. One of the most famous flash fiction stories that's ever been told, and I believe it was Ernest Hemingway, and the story said, this was the whole story: baby shoes baby shoes for sale, baby shoes never worn. 6 words.
Yeah.
Now, what does that story tell you? It doesn't tell you all the details, but you know enough about that to understand the point of the story. So that's kind of like what we're looking for, is don't try to like set up an entire crime and how it's investigated and how it's solved and how it ends. Just tell us the most pivotal moment of this story. Even if you think of a bigger story, just tell me the most pivotal moment. And that could be where you catch the bad guy, or it could be something completely different. Okay. Is that any other questions? You guys are asking great questions, by the way. So let's see. Here are some ideas. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, if you go to if you're on the page, the Spark Flash Fiction Writers page, I'm assuming you are since you're watching this video. Earlier today, I dropped a PDF of a flash fiction story that I wrote for Spark a couple of years ago, and it is a romantic suspense story. And so I usually use this for my newsletter subscribers, but because I love you, I'm giving this to you guys to read. And I think it is an example, it might help you understand how a story is told.
You wrote a story one time that I still remember to this day, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's about a girl and a boy, and it's like she's having to leave to go back to her job or something, and they're on the pier. What is the name of that story, Hope, that you wrote?
That was one of my favorites, actually. That is in the summer issue that Jennifer dropped the link to. It's called The Good Goodbye.
Y'all have got to read that story. I'm telling you, I read that story, and I just I had to read it. I read it multiple times. I was like, that is so well done and well written. It blew me away when I read that. I was like, that's Hope. That was so awesome.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you. That's actually one of my favorite stories. And it's funny because I'll tell you the reason, the way I came up with that story. I was walking. So pre-COVID, I had a full-time job, and I still have the full-time job, but now I work from home. But I worked in an office, and I had my lunch hour, and that's when I would do a lot of my writing. And so I would go out. I worked on the square in a small town, and I would go out to like one of the restaurants on the square, and I would sit and eat my lunch, and I would write. So I was walking back from lunch one day, and I passed by this clothing store, and they had the doors open, and they had the radio going, and there was a song. And the song said, "We're getting really good at goodbye." And I was like, okay, there's a story in that.
Mhm.
What is their story? Why are they getting good at goodbye? And that's what prompted me to write that story.
Oh, good. It's such a good story. I've got to read it.
So Jennifer dropped a link for Flash Fiction's upcoming themes. Somebody had asked what were future topics. So we usually just do 3 issues a year, and the first issue that we're going to do in 2021 is going to be the romantic suspense issue, which is why we're talking about it tonight. And that's going to come out for Valentine's Day. And, because what's more Valentine's-y than, murder and mayhem?
My kind of Valentine.
Brain,
Somebody ever a box of chocolates.
why not?
A poison box.
Poison.
Oh, there you go. A poison box of chocolates.
Definitely. Why do they poison them? What are they trying to?
The rose thorn.
Yes. There's so many things it can be. But and then I think the other issues we're going to do for the summer, we're going to do one about inspired by a song, which I actually was inspired by a song to write that. But yeah, so being inspired by a song, and then the fall issue is going to be falling in love. So it's going to be something that's autumn related. So that'll be kind of fun, like hay rides and pumpkin patches and corn mazes and
pumpkin spice lattes.
Yes.
Darlene's favorite.
So that's going to be for fall. So those are the topics.
A pumpkin pie eating contest.
It's definitely. So let's talk about, we actually brainstormed some ideas for you guys, some prompts that maybe help getting you thinking about certain, things that you could use for your romantic suspense idea. And one of them obviously would be like a detective story, a private investigator or a police detective trying to solve a crime, whether they actually solve it in that scene or not. Someone working for the Secret Service or some other type of security detail. It could be a reunion between the exes. Oh, let me say this too about your characters. So you ask about how many characters. Well, you obviously want a hero and a heroine because this is romantic suspense. And you may or may not have the antagonist in there. You may have a sidekick. You may have a victim. You may have something like that. But try not to have too many because, again, the more characters you have, the less stage time they're going to have in your 1,000 words. And you really want to be able to tell the story between the 2 most important people, which is the hero and heroine. But I will say this. For your characters, unless you're going to write their meet cute, and that is and you guys know what I mean by meet cute, right? That's the moment where the 2 characters meet for the first time. If you're going to tell that scene, then that's the scene you tell, and you don't end with the happily ever after because they're just getting started. But a lot of times it's a good idea to have your characters already know each other when you start the story. Drop us into the story where the characters already know each other, have tension and conflict, romantic tension, and drop us into the action. Okay? So one of the ideas here was a reunion between exes who are having to serve on a security detail together. That would be fun. Reunion romances are always fun.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I love writing reunion romances.
Yeah.
Love it.
Everybody that got away and you get a second chance, the second chance love stories.
Forgiveness. I love those kinds of stories.
Yes, and that brings a lot of conflict when there's a past between the 2 characters and somebody's going to have to forgive somebody. That's always fun.
And that's what my 3rd book is a reunion, actually.
So. Oh, good. Those are awesome. I like
all
that.
Of mine are.
Are they?
They're on my right. Yes, they're always reunion.
The one that I actually won Genesis with and have out in submission right now is a reunion romance. Yeah. Friends to More. And that's always a good trope. That's one of my favorites. Oh, somebody said they love reunion second chances. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
They're very popular.
Friends to More is also a popular one. And maybe they're friends to more looking for a significant other's killer. That could be fun. Always partners, partners on the police force, partners in the hospital, partners in crime. maybe
I'm
your
sure.
story is told from the bad guy's point of view. Maybe the bad guy needs to find some love.
Mm-hmm.
Switch it up, do something different. It could be really amazing. Shannon, you mentioned in that whodunit issue that somebody actually wrote a story from the
Yeah.
killer, but you didn't know it till the end.
No, it's called Mansion Murder. It was written by Angela Carlisle, and it's basically the scene of where the police are swarming into this mansion where they found this dead body. Charles, his name is, and then you don't realize, she's kind of telling it from her perspective and what she's seeing, and then when you get to the very end, she does a little twist, and she's like, they know, like, they're coming for her, and then she says they know. And so it's such a good story. Another really, really good one you should read.
I love a twist ending in flash fiction. I love thinking one thing and the very last line being the punch.
Yes.
Lets me know I was on the wrong track the whole time and it's really this. And then I want to go back and read it again. And I love that kind of ending for flash fiction. It's very
readers love that twist.
That word, Hitchcockian. We were talking about how Alfred Hitchcock and how much I love him, and he's really great about the punch ending, the twist ending where you're going, oh, wait, what?
Yeah, like hooks you, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so good.
I know, I love that. Darlene, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying that readers love that twist at the end.
They do.
They love to be caught off guard. So I know it's always fun to try to figure things out in a story, but yet when you think you've got it figured out, and it's like wham.
Yeah, I know. I love that. That's one of the reasons why I like suspense and mysteries. Okay, so let's go back to some other ideas. We talked about think about setting your story in another time period other than current times. Set a story in a war, in World War II, the American Revolution. Have a female pilot. The Pinkertons. Have like a spy in World War II or something like that. That's kind of fun. Do scientific investigators looking for the source of a terrible virus. That sounds too close to reality.
Yeah.
But set it on reality. Put it on Mars.
Yeah, there you go.
That could be fun. Star Wars, science fiction, dystopian. Switch it up. Fantasy.
Fantasy. I love dystopian. I love, Divergent movies, and then the Hunger Games, all that dystopian feel. I love those kind of stories too.
And there's lots of potential for danger and suspense in those kinds of stories, because if the whole world has, fallen apart and exploded, and there's danger at every turn,
I love spy stories too, like Alias.
Yes.
Alias is I loved all of her costumes and her wigs and so that would be
undercover and false identities or mistaken identities. And your character could be disguised as somebody, and the love interest thinks they're somebody that they're not, or mistakes them for someone else, and that's always fun. Let's see if I've
got bodyguards.
Bodyguard falling for his or her client. I mentioned that in our brainstorming session, and somebody said, cue Whitney Houston.
Yeah. Costner.
That was a fun story for a lot of reasons. Hostage situation presents a lot of danger and potential for romantic tension. Stakeouts in close quarters. I think Shannon mentioned something about finding someone in a closet, hiding in a closet, or maybe the characters are hiding in the closet from the bad guy. I mean,
maid that found the dead body in the closet. Yeah, pretty good. I just thought of one that just kind of popped in my head too. What about like a bounty hunter that falls in love with the one she's caught the guy, and she's taking him back to prison,
or maybe
let him go.
Maybe Bond's whatever they are when they go.
Yeah.
And the person she has to track down is her ex.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
You can do something like that. I like PI stories. I was a big back in the day. I'm telling my age probably, but I loved Veronica Mars. I thought those were such great stories. PI, and like, of course they were detectives, but Castle, those TV. I always kind of think, when I think of stories and think of books, I relate them to TV shows or movies, because I think story is story, whether it's visual or whether it's in the written word. And so, and then of course, some great inspiration as well is our Bibles. There's great stories in your Bible that you get inspiration for flash fiction stories in that as well. But you can,
take
you don't
biblical
tell the biblical story
in a different time period.
Yeah, you don't have to write it in the biblical time, but you can take the concept of what happened and make it modern day if you want to.
Oh yeah, that's people are always asking me like, why do you like such danger and I always call it murder and mayhem. I don't like blood and guts and gore, but I do like suspense. And I'm like, have you ever read the Bible? Because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
You actually just sparked a story that I started a while ago based on Rahab, actually.
Yeah, the spies. Right? That's exactly what I was thinking of, with Rahab and the spies. You were saying you want spies?
Yes, Jennifer just said Rahab and the spies. I mean, it's got it all right there.
Yeah,
I started a story about that.
Read the story and find out who Rahab marries and who her children are.
Yeah, great story.
So, okay. So we've been talking for like 36 minutes. We did have a couple of questions. Somebody said they were thinking the same thing. We did have a couple of questions that came up on the Facebook group, and they were asking about how to build the suspense over that short period of time. And my answer to that is don't build it. Drop us right in the middle of it.
Yep.
Put us in the suspense. Don't wait to build it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have any other suggestions on that or any comments? Oh, Shannon, mention what you said about the beginning scene of your novel.
Oh, yeah. So in my novel, like in Cave of Secrets, my beginning scene is basically she's in a cave and she finds her best friend's dead body and she has to go get her ex-love because it's his sister. She has to go tell him. So even in that scene, there's some good suspense, and you're dropped right into the action, right into the suspense of the story. And that's what you want to do. I know Francine Rivers does this real well in some of her books. She just wrote one that came out not long ago, Masterpiece, and she dropped you right in the very first scene. Stephen James, he's a great one. There's the pawn, the first chapter of The Pawn. Oh my gosh, so disturbing, but so good, so well written. It drops you right in the middle of the suspense, and that's what you want to do with flash fiction. When you start those stories, you want to drop. You're right. You don't want to build it. You just put them right in smack in the middle of the danger, suspense, or mystery, whatever you're writing about.
Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, Darlene, what?
I was just going to say, I would just add to that, like drop them in and let the reader, like I said before, leave things to their imagination.
Yeah, I think you do that too, Darlene. Don't you? In your Border Breach, they're immediately, like right in the first chapter, they're attacked by the criminal story. Yep.
They're starting out their normal day, and all of a sudden, that's what we like. That's what romantic suspense readers look for. They don't, they want to be dropped right in the danger. Somebody answered my guess. Boaz of Ruth is Rahab's son. Yes, thank you.
Correct. Very nice.
And if you keep going, you'll get, into the lineage, the genealogy of Jesus. So just saying.
Yeah, lots of good stuff.
Eyes in the Bible, y'all. Just saying. Are there any other questions that our group has? Anything? Jennifer, did I forget to mention anything? And seriously, you guys, you're welcome to go and read the story that I dropped in there. Not saying it's the pattern that you should follow. I'm just saying it's an example. And somebody had, Shannon, I guess we had talked about, does there have to be a kiss?
No, just a promise of a kiss. You don't have to have, you don't want to force a kiss, especially if they've just met. If you do a cute meet, like you were talking about, where they just first meet, bump into each other. Hallmark's famous for that, the bump into each other and they spill coffee on each other.
Right.
Yeah. So wouldn't have them kiss right after he just spilled coffee on her ice. And that's about all the time you're going to have for a 1,000-word story.
That's why it's always good to, have your characters, already be established in some type of relationship. But, always make sure that there's romantic tension.
Absolutely. There, and the promise of that attraction that there's more to come later off page. So.
Jennifer says she thinks we hit everything. So that's awesome. If you guys have questions after this, if you think of something later, feel free to drop it in the comments on the Facebook page, and we'll check them out and see if we can answer the questions for you. But I hope this has given you some idea of what we're looking for, some ideas of what you can write. I hope it's got you all pumped up and excited to write something, because we want to see some really amazing stories. Deadline for this is middle of January, I think. I'd have to go back and look at the website. But yeah, I hope that we get to see all of your amazing stories. Can't wait to read them. And thank you for joining us. And you guys have a great night. Thank you, Darlene and Shannon, for being my
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
tonight. It was so fun hanging out with you. All righty. Guys, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.